Breaking Marvel news, guys. Zack Synder, the director of Justice League, has signed a multi-picture deal in the MCU. We've got to break it all down. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button. Let's get right into this absolutely insane news. Guys, this news is literally just coming out. I saw this about 20 minutes ago coming out from Collider. Jeff Snyder has an incredible scoop talking about how Scott Snyder has indeed signed a big deal with Marvel Studios. According to the report, Kevin Feige reached out to Zack Snyder a long time ago about possibly doing something in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but Zack was very hesitant to do this at first. Apparently, Snyder wasn't that keen on coming back to superhero movies in general, and his wife is still a producer over at Warner Brothers, and so there was a lot of conflict of interest. Despite all the craziness that went down between Zack and Warner Brothers when it comes to the Justice League film, he is still a fan of Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers still likes him a lot. However, Collider is reporting that Zack Snyder was convinced to sign a big deal with Marvel Studios, and it all had to do with the pitch. Are you ready for this one, guys? Kevin Feige apparently pitched that Zack Snyder should do Dark Avengers in the MCU.
No way! No way. No way.
And according to the report, when this pitch started circulating back and forth between the two parties, Zack came up with a really good idea on how to incorporate his style and aesthetic into a Dark Avengers for the MCU, and the deal was signed. And strangely enough, there's even more proof that this is true, as in a very strange turn, Kevin Feige actually responded when Collider reached out to him to comment. Here's what Feige said right here. He says, and I quote, "These days you hear a lot of different rumors on the internet, and you always have to be careful when you're hearing reports like this. However, when it comes to this one, it's real AF, fam. We got the mad lad himself to sign up to do Dark Avengers and shit all over Warner Brothers." That's right, it's April Fool's! April Fool's, I got you!
Got him! Got him!
But don't get too mad. Don't click off the video yet. I actually do want to speculate about this and talk about how I think Zack Snyder could actually do a Dark Avengers movie in the MCU and how cool that would be. But yeah, just to be clear, like, it was totally April Fool's joke. There's absolutely no truth to this whatsoever. So, gotcha. Sorry. I only do this once a year, so it is what it is. But now let's speculate about this. First of all, I really like Zack Snyder. Like, I really think he's good at making movies. I'm a fan of his films, even Batman v Superman, although when I did see it in theaters, I totally laughed at the Martha line and I thought it was a big fat mess. However, the director's cut of that film is very good. And I mean, Zack is just phenomenal. I mean, I really love his Watchmen movie. I think it's like a perfect portrayal of the different things that were going on in that very dense and complicated book. 300 is obviously awesome. I like his Dawn of the Dead movie. I love Man of Steel, unabashedly love Man of Steel. And I even like Sucker Punch. Like, I think this dude is just really good at making movies. However, as I said, like in the report earlier, it's pretty obvious that there would be a lot of conflict of interest here. His wife is still a big producer over at Warner Brothers, and Zack does have a lot of ties to Warner Brothers even now. There's all this stuff about the Snyder Cut and releasing the Snyder Cut, and it looks as though that might actually happen, at least in some way, over at Warner Brothers, so he's likely working with them to make that happen. But even if they could get past that particular issue with bringing Zack over to the MCU, there's a big problem with his aesthetic. I mean, Zack Snyder has a very particular vibe to his movies. His color palette is often desaturated, you know, with a lot of light and cool blues all over the place, and that does not match up well with what the MCU has established with a lot of vibrance and sort of poppy colors. I do, however, think that if they would figure that out visually, Zack could still totally play within the universe of Marvel and actually do some really great work. It would all kind of come down to how much of his creative vision is he willing to let go, because, you know, he was sort of a director's director. He's a very auteur director, right? Making his movies the way he wants to make them. But when you look at what happened with BVS and when you look what happened with Justice League, it's pretty clear that the studio came in and sort of interfered and sort of made him do some things, and he did bend the knee and work with the studio. So he's capable of doing that, and that would be very important with him coming to the MCU, as Feige is that way. He's got that iron Feige grip, man. He's not going to let you just do whatever you want. It has to fit within the system. And so if they could get past the hangups with Warner Brothers, the fact that his wife is still a producer over there, if they could come to terms with matching the color palette and the mise-en-scène of Zack's style into the MCU, and if they could figure out how to work together as far as creative control, then I do think that Dark Avengers would be a great fit for Snyder. I mean, think about it. What he was doing over with DC was a much darker thing. He's telling darker stories, more mature, more gritty. His Batman was killing. All of these different things that could actually service a Dark Avengers film very, very well. Like, I just imagine a Dark Avengers film being sort of propagandistic with a lot of scenes that are sort of out of the public's eye, where we get to see how the Dark Avengers are really doing things, and they're absolutely brutal, destroying people, taking no prisoners, just being, you know, straight up villains, right? So I can see Snyder handling an ensemble cast like that, doing that kind of darkness, that very volatile stuff very well. And I mean, the Sentry would be such a cool character to have in this movie, in this Dark Avengers, and it's literally like a version of Superman. It just feels very similar to a lot of the themes and the aesthetic that Zack Snyder was already playing with. And so I would absolutely love it if he came over to do Dark Avengers, and I think that would be the perfect MCU property for him to tackle. And now let's shout out Jeffrey Dean. Indeed, James Cameron was going to direct a Spider-Man movie in the 90s. So shout out to you, Jeffrey. Now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know, what is the name of the animated movie that Zack Snyder did? He did a crazy animated movie with a bunch of owls. I actually saw it in the theaters, but I want to know if you know the answer. What was the name of this movie that was animated that Zack Snyder did? Answer that question in the comment section below. I hope you're not too mad about this April Fool's clickbait. Make sure you let us know what you think about Zack Snyder potentially coming to the MCU. Do you think it could happen? And if you absolutely need more nerdy content in your life, click or tap over there to watch some more great videos. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.